Jon, welcome.
Welcome, Rick. How you doing?
Doing very well. How about yourself?
Very good, thank you.
I was in my kitchen yesterday, and I said to my kids, I said, do you know this song? And they says, oh, yes. Oh, yeah, of course. Every kid knows Roundabout. How does that make you feel?
Fantastic. Get them to listen to 1,000 Hands, and we're going up and up and up. Today, they just put out a video of Phil Collins. It's in the air tonight. Coronavirus.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's great.
Phil will be happy. He needs the money.
Yes. That's not true. That is not true.
I know that.
When I was in high school, to prove that you were a great musician, you had to be able to play long distance runaround. Okay? This is like where I was growing up.
Yeah.
That was a song. If you could play long distance runaround, people freaked out. Oh my God, he can play a long distance runaround. Do you remember writing the song?
I sure do. At that moment in time, Yes had really sort of found its feet musically. The Yes album was the first album that we knew what we were doing. The first two albums, we were still trying to figure out basically what we were about musically. And I remember Long Distance Runaround is very, very simple idea. And I went in the studio one afternoon and I said, let's try this song, because everybody's sitting around, what are we going to do next, and so on, And I said, well, it's just these chords, and I played them, and they all joined in. And I just said, okay, guys, why don't we just, why don't we try, I'll just, Rick, chords, you guys are going, da-da-da-da, 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 like stupid, and they're going ga-ga-ga-ga, boom. And of course, Bill loved that very much, because it was like, and that beat, that beat, that beat, that beat. And then the chorus, So that's how we worked together, I was able to come up with ideas that were sort of totally left field. And that's how we recorded it. We recorded it one afternoon. It was really a lot of fun.
You would come in just with the ideas, and you guys would just arrange it on the spot in the studio?
Yeah. So everything was done because we were very compatible, with each other. And I was like the guy in the middle. I could hear stuff while they were learning stuff. And I heard the next part and then sang the next part to them. And then, the idea is like playing tennis, you send an idea out and then it comes back with another idea, and before we know it, we're all recreating ideas and making them sound better. And, it's really fun working with musicians that way, especially a group, a group of musicians. And I was very fortunate to work with fantastic musicians all my life,
When you were recording back then, for example, you would record multiple records. In 71, you had 2 records come out in the same year. And that was actually common back then, right?
Yeah. Creation, music. See, Steve joined the band, and all of a sudden I had a writing partner. I would write with Chris, but it was very spasmodic with Chris. But with Steve, he was a master of chord ideas, progressions, and riffs and things. So we were writing, whenever we met, we'd write something in the studio. We'd write some stuff, and then we'd write something else in the cafe, And on tour, a lot of things that happened musically with Yes was on tour, when you've got plenty of time after a show or a day off and things like that, where you sit down and you start writing together. And I would sit with Steve a lot, And then Chris would come in, and Chris was this sort of very interesting musician, that he was so melodic on his bass that sort of helped my vocal so much. And then he'd sing along with me. So because me and Chris started the band, we were the integral part, the yin and yang of the band. And no matter who came in, we were still the yin and yang of the band,
Can you talk a little bit about recording back in those days, what the process was like?
If you think about it, we would record Yours Is No Disgrace, and it's in 7 sections. So you record one section at a time. Same with Close to the Edge. You know, Close to the Edge was recorded in maybe 20 sections. And you have to have a really good engineer. And we were lucky we had Eddie Offord, who was like a number 6 musician in the band, because he was a musician as well as an engineer.
Yeah.
And we have stories that kind of get funny, because he put together a 2-minute idea, and then you talk it through, and then the band start rehearsing it, and I'm listening and saying, yeah, that's right. Oh, Rick, can you, you know, or, no, that's good. Good, yeah, and I'm thinking about the next part. Because I've already worked with Steve on the next part, the next bridge, if you like, you know. And so you do it in sections. And then...
And would you mix them down and then assemble them in on one reel?
Yeah, the idea was you got 24 tracks. In those days, you had 24 tracks and of sounds, 24 layers. So you finished up with 24 tracks that you would mix together. The bass come up a bit, vocal more, so like that.
Always.
Yeah. And then you do a mix, and it's on a 1/4-inch tape, like that. And then, you know, Eddie Offord would put that tape on a reel and put it to one side, and then do the next part, put it to one side. So we finish up with a stack of 1/4-inch tapes. Then you start sticking them together with super glue. No, sellotape.
So I always wondered that if you would actually record them in sections and then put them together like that. It's great.
Yeah. But you really got to a point where the band really performed that 2-minute idea really tight, you know. I remember the beginning of Close to the Edge, because me and Steve had already sort of found our way in structure of it. I had a certain song, and then Steve had Close to the Edge, round by the corner, and I sang Down to the End, round by the river. And then I said, change key, and it hit another chord. Seasons will pass you by. I get up, he'd find the chord. I get down. Now that it's all over and done. Okay, that'll work. So you work that out, and then you bring that to the guys, because they've been working on something else, an intro section, you know. And we got the next section, and it would be like tennis. I kept thinking of musical tennis, you know.
And you do a bunch of takes. You get one that really everybody agreed upon was the right one.
Except Chris.
And then you would, except Chris.
Chris was always saying, one more. I said, but we've done 13. The second one was brilliant. Just one more. Okay, Chris.
And you'd go back in, John, and listen to these, right, in the control room and say, okay, I like this one, I like this one. Would you guys argue as to or would you pretty much agree?
Never argue. More discuss, you know. You say, well, what's the point of doing another one when that number 3 was amazing? Okay, we'll do one more. And then it just happens that other one, the next one we did was fantastic. And said, okay, that's enough. And that's a full afternoon's work, you know, for a 2-minute piece of music, you know.
Can you tell me a little about when you would do your vocals and do harmonies and how you would record those? Would you be in an ISO booth? Would you guys, and then when you did harmony parts, if you had multiple people singing, would you sing around one mic, or would you just do all the overdubs? How would you do it?
Yeah, we tried singing around one mic now and again. For effect, more for effect of the sound of the voices, and you could track it and track it and track it, and then squeeze it down. Seeing all good people, to, you know, as many voices as you can, you know, for that. But when we got into the you know, the harder work was when I would then go in early at 10 in the morning and do my vocal. By the time they came, I'd done my vocal. And then they could, Chris would add harmony, and then Steve would come in and do his harmony. And it was a very methodical way of doing things. Nobody was sitting around judging, you know. It was a very kind of unique moment in time to make sure that, I think it wasn't until Fragile, maybe the Yes album, Fragile, I felt, gosh, I'm singing pretty good now. Before then, I was very shy, being in a studio, my voice not sounding as good as I hoped it would be. But by then, I felt really confident, you know. So I'd go in there and sing my parts in the morning, and which I do every morning now anyway. I do the same thing. And by the end of the experience of a piece of music, just being able to sit back and watch Eddie Alford mix it, and we'd sit back and listen to everything on the big speakers, heaven. It's like being in heaven, musical heaven, you know. There was one funny time though. We were finishing off Close to the Edge, and you know Close to the Edge, the song?
Of course.
And
yeah.
there was, it comes out of the organ, Rick Wakeman solo, and then it goes into the next stanza, you know. And
Yeah.
da 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 da, and then it goes in, Close to the Edge, round by the corner. So we'd done everything, the solo, then the stanza, and according to the man who showed his eyes stretched on into space, he turned, you know, and then it goes into the big song at the end. And what was happening by then, Eddie Alford was doing 1/4-inch mixes, and there must have been about, I don't know, probably about 10 strips of tape, and they were very long, so he used to hang them up on the wall with some sellotape, you know. So he had all these strings, and he had all numbered and everything, so I knew where he was going. And it was a Friday night, and the cleaner, Lizzie, who lived next door, and this is at Advision Studio, Lizzie next door comes in and starts sweeping up and cleaning up and get out the way, kids, get out the way, you rock and rollers, you know. And so she went out, and we just had that last chorus to edit in with a 1/4-inch, and Eddie's looking for it, and he can't find, where's number 27? Where's number 27? I put it up there, and we looked around on the floor, and somebody said, well, Lizzie just cleaned up. And he said, oh my God, it took us about 4 hours to mix it correctly onto 1/4-inch. And so we ran outside in the dustbin, and it was raining, and we're pulling out pieces of tape. 19, no, that didn't work. 26, okay. And we take it back in, and we cleaned it, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, and we just, okay, and we put it on, and we all sat there like, please. And it was perfect.
One of the things about those records, they're such great headphone records. They're all the panning of the instruments.
Yeah.
I mean, were you conscious of that about headphone records? Would you put headphones on while you're listening to the mixes and say, "Oh, put this over here, put this over here"?
That came around that period of time with the ocean sound in the middle of Close to the Edge, and you know, surround sound things that you think about, and that was done probably just happenstance. That, you know, Eddie Alford was a great engineer. He was brilliant, and he did all that positioning and everything, and everybody had a gig, you know. I was in the middle of everybody, zooming around, making sure this is going to work, that's going to work, need more lyric, I've got to figure out a better lyric for this section, and so on and so on. And everybody was committed to their work, and that was the brilliance of Yes in the 70s up until the end of the 70s. You know, there was ups and downs, of course, which, you know, every band since the Beatles had ups and downs.
In the 80s, when you had your biggest hit, really, Owner of a Lonely Heart, probably your biggest hit, or at least
it was.
For people that, it was your biggest hit.
It was.
Right? I mean, that was one of the biggest songs. I mean, it's one of the biggest songs ever, but one of the biggest songs of the 80s for sure.
Yeah.
And it was interesting for me because I grew up, you know, in the 70s. I was in college when that hit.
Yeah.
And seemed like there was a whole new group of people that experienced Yes for the first time then. What was that like as far as the change in sound with the band?
You know, 90125 was a miracle in a way for me, because I was in the south of France and I'd let go of Yes because of a very bad experience with producers and managers in trying to make an album in Paris that never worked, you know. And it was outside influences that did that with the band, and that's part of being in a band. You've got to be careful what outside influences talk about, blah, blah, blah. So I was in south of France writing music about fairies and Marc Chagall, the great Russian artist who I met. And then I went to London and Chris called me up. And I've been listening to the radio, by the way. There's one of the best radio stations in the world. It's called FIP, F-I-P, out of Paris. And they were playing these records from a guy who used to, Malcolm McLaren, who was the manager of Sex Pistols. And he did an album called Duck Rock with Trevor Horn. And Trevor Horn was the bee's knees as a producer at that time. He was having hit records, and he tried to be in Yes for a while, which really not the best gig for him. And he had started working with Trevor Rabin, Trevor Horn, Chris Squire, Alan, and Tony. They'd been calling themselves Cinema, and that's when Chris called me and said, do you want to listen to some music? I said, yeah, I'm cool. So we got in his car and listened to these tapes, and they were so amazing, right on that edge where sampling was coming through, and there was something about the songs that really, they needed help in some ways, you know. I remember listening to Owner of a Lonely Heart and thinking, the chorus is a hit, you know, that, but the sounds and the samples, what's the sample? And he said, oh, it's James Brown. Da, 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 da. And I said, it's so Trevor Horn, you know. And then I said, it's missing a few things. And Chris said, I thought you'd say that. Would you be interested in singing on the tracks? And I said, well, yeah, I would. Because I think the production is amazing, to be honest. I think the production is a unique energy. And I think that, the verse of Owner needs to be a little bit more spiky at the moment. It's a bit sort of wishy-washy, sort of. That's what I said anyway. And so he said, well, come on in tomorrow and join the band and we'll call ourselves Yes. And I said, that's why, yes. Because if you join, it'll be Yes. Of course it will, you know. So I went in the following day, met Trevor Rabin, and we got on great. I realized he was a very talented musician, guitar player and everything, songwriter. And so we started working on the verse from Own of a Lonely Heart. And I said right away, it should be da-da-da, da-da-da. Because you got da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. Move yourself. You won't understand, never thinking of the future. You know, that's how I work. I sort of mimic what I'm going to sing. And he had, oh yeah, I'll just tell. And he wrote the second line. And then, you know, we got through the first verse and Trevor Rabin said, you get on with it, because I'm going to have some lunch. And I said, okay, I'll just get on with it. And I just carried on writing the verses. And Trevor Horn helped a couple of times. So it was a very joint experience to write. The verses need to be more, shall we say, interesting, because Owner of a Lonely Heart, you know. I just knew the Owner was a hit, and it's a question then of how they're going to project it. And you know, we had a couple of guys came along and make a video on top of a skyscraper in London, and we're all dressed up in suits, and then we become eagles or snakes, and it's kind of a fun video. And I thought, well, the new world is MTV, and of course that was the 80s, MTV, and you know, that was a great experience. You know, the touring of the world and everything with that album, and you get treated with obviously great respect wherever you go because you're a rock star, which is something goes over my head, you know, because I was actually on tour of the 90125. I was still working on music and discovering new ideas about music that I wanted to create, and so I didn't sort of lock myself into the yes cage, if you like, and I'm yes, I can't go out, I can't dream anything else, you know. But I do all the time. I'm always thinking of new ideas and new music.
Jon, when you come up with an idea now, for example,
Yeah.
do you have a rig that you use that you or do you use voice memos? Let's say you have a melody idea. What do you do? How do you put it down? How do you keep track of things? You just remember.
Yeah, because what I found out was no matter what, that song is not going to go away. When 5 years later, you're thinking, oh, what the hell is that song I keep hearing? Oh, I'll write it, I'll record it. And you know, you come back later with the music that you wrote. I've just finished a piece of music for Christmas that I wrote 1981. And it's a sort of orchestral piece, but I'm putting lyrics to it now, just trying it out. Just for a gift for all the fans, put it on YouTube.
Does it ever occur to you that you've written some of the biggest songs of all time and that have been played on the radio forever and that still get played on the radio all the time? How does that feel, or do you not even think about it?
No, the longest songs, yes. Some of the longest ones, but that's all the Beatles' fault because they did Hey Jude, and you know, they did a 7-minute piece of music that was a hit, and maybe want to do a longer piece of music, you know.
Okay, yeah. Did that actually give people a license to have longer songs that got, you know, that you could actually have radio songs that were longer?
Yeah, the Beatles changed the world, you know, musically speaking. It's a natural thing that happens anyway, but you don't copy anybody or say, oh, now we must do a song just like Zappa, you know, or whatever. No, it's not something that was part of our vocabulary in the band. But me and Chris, we first saw King Crimson, their first gig at the Speakeasy, playing their first album in the Court of the Crimson King. And I looked at Chris and said, we got to practice better because these guys are amazing. And then maybe 5 years later, we were on tour with the Kinks in America, and the opening act was Matt Vishnu Orchestra. And I looked at Chris and said,
wow,
we got to rehearse better. Because they were unbelievable. And there's always that learning curve that, you know, you listen to the band, when the band came out with their album from Big Pink. Oh, the sound of it.
Beautiful.
The sound of it. But the sound was unbelievably real. We were into reverb and, you know, and there was like straightforward, in-your-face sound, music, right from a room in Woodstock. And the songs were immaculate. And that happens at least every 6 months. Something will come through to me and just go. A musician needs that kind of help on a regular basis. I was just watching Ravi Shankar with Anushka from 3 years ago. Just blows your mind, the kind of music that's around us all the time, and just makes you want to be a better artist. And that's what it's all about.
Tell me what you're working on right now, Jon. You have a new project you've been working on?
I've been working on a couple for years. My son Damien, I was talking to him one day, he lives in London, and he said, Dad, you know Elias, your first solo album, why don't you do Son of Elias? And that was 15 years ago. And I started sketching out a piece called Zamran, the Son of Elias. And it's all about the creation of the planet Earth, you know, in terms of the creation of the planet, you know, how it works and stuff. And it was something that I started doing and then stop and doing and stop, and now I have about 4 hours of ideas, and it's very hard to piece them together because it's not ready yet. You see, it's like baking a cake. You know, it's not ready until it's ready, and be careful you don't want to burn it. And other than that, I've been working on another project that I really love very much. Actually, you can YouTube Jon Anderson Joyfulness, and it's 4 pieces of music that I created just before I went on tour last year with 1000 Hands Band. And I just did this music 1 week, and I just like it very much. And I started writing lyrics and songs within the music. So there are 4 pieces that are on YouTube. And my friend Mickey Byrne has done some beautiful videos on them. And so that's another project that's slowly cooking.
What do you think about things like streaming now, streaming music?
Excellent.
And you like streaming, but what do you think about the album experience, you know, of actually having an actual physical album that you flip over, that you read the album covers, and you know who is in the bands,
Yeah.
you know who produced it, there's artwork. Artwork was a huge part of Yes.
Yeah.
Right? The album cover was really, you guys mastered the album cover.
Yeah, well, we weren't the first, of course. You know, the Beatles did it, Pink Floyd did it, Tommy. You remember when Tommy came out? God help.
Yes.
Oh boy, we'd just been on tour a year earlier. Yes, it just started, and the first tour we ever did, real tour of England, was The Who, Rod Stewart and the Small Faces, Joe Cocker. I was mesmerized by Pete Townsend and The Who and Keith Moon, and oh my God, they were amazing. I was mesmerized by everybody. And then towards the end of the tour, Pete Townsend comes over and says, John, and I look up and say, Pete Townsend's talking to me. Yes, Pete. He said, like your band, nice band. I said, thank you, Pete. I'm making an album. He said, I'm doing this album about a blind, dumb, deaf kid. And I said to myself, Pete Townsend is talking to me. And then the album came out with the most beautifully arranged album cover, opened it up, and that's really how what we did. We were sort of, the next extension of that was Roger Dean and finding somebody who could actually stay with the band each album for a period of time. And it worked.
John, if I said to you, if you think back over your career, are there any specific gigs that just jump right out from whenever? Is there things that happened on gigs, or can you say, I remember this one gig in 1973 here that this was a really special gig?
There were so many. One or two do stick out because we played in front of 130,000 people in Philadelphia at the Soldier Field, or I think it was not Soldier Field, something like that, Memorial Field. And the opening act was Want You Show Me the Way. That guy. What's his name? Pete Frampton. Great guy. I mean, he was brilliant. And he opened up the show, and then we went on stage in front of thousands of people doing Gates of Delirium with laser beams. It's like, take that, suckers! Thinking, I wonder if they're going to like this. Gosh. But we had a great time. I remember one time we toured with the Eagles, their first tour. And, we got friendly with the Eagles, and, we took them out for dinner the night before the last gig. And we played our last show and came off stage feeling really good. And backstage, it was all dark, and the roadies had these flashlights saying, this way, guys, this way. The lights have gone out. Don't worry, it's the electricity problem. This way. And we're going down this corridor, and there were just flashlights everywhere. And then it put us in this big room, and then it all went quiet. And then the lights came on, and there was a table full of custard cream pies, and the eagle standing there and started throwing custard cream pies all over us. And Steve Howe's got his guitar going, "Oh no, my guitar!" And I jumped on the table and started throwing things at my dad.
That's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe if you're a